Olá, tudo bem? Bom, muito mudou desde semana passada, né? Eu fiquei chocado que Lula foi solto na sexta-feira, eu não estava esperando. Eu imaginei que seria na segunda, na terça, que a juíza Juliana Lebos iria enrolar para ele ficar mais tempo no Superintendência da Polícia Federal lá em Curitiba. E Telesur ofereceu comprar uma passagem para mim para Curitiba na segunda-feira. Então, eu estava planejando viajar para Curitiba, ele foi solto. Eu fiquei muito feliz, porque eu estava em frente do Sindicato dos Metalúrgicos do ABC em abril do ano passado. Como você pode ver nessas imagens aqui. Eu lembrei, eu levantei aquela manhã, parece que tinha uma nuvem preta em cima da minha cabeça. Eu realmente pensei assim, será que eu volto para casa? Porque naquela época eu não sabia se Alckmin iria mandar aquele policial do jiu-jitsu para lá, se teria tiros, não sei, eu estava com medo também. Eu vou mostrar agora um clipe de um sindicatalista que eu entrevistei.
Nós estamos aqui contra a prisão do Lula, mas mais do que isso, por um projeto e para além disso, porque o Lula não vai ser preso hoje, e se for preso, nós estaremos com o Lula onde ele estiver, o tempo todo, e vamos defender o projeto que ele representa, porque ele representa um projeto de país, e esse projeto é o projeto que nós defendemos e vamos continuar defendendo com todo o povo que está aqui, e ainda vai chegar muito mais gente, muito mais gente. Isso é um recado para esse covarde desse Sérgio Moro.
Ele falou que eles não iriam abandonar Lula e não abandonou, né? Ontem eu voltei para São Bernardo e, primeiro, tinha muito mais gente ontem do que ano passado, né? E o clima era de festa, as pessoas estavam abraçando. Muitas pessoas me reconheceram do 247, que foi um prazer. Quando eu voltei para casa, eu percebi que meu Rode, que o microfone altamente profissional, quebrou. Peguei som com algumas coisas, estava indo e vindo o microfone. Mas então, eu estava lá com algumas pessoas da União Nacional do Moradia Popular, conversando, entrevistando uma pessoa, e recebi um WhatsApp do Ative. E Ative falou, Brian, eu estou aqui no segundo andar, vem para cá. E eu, tipo, como que eu vou chegar lá? Olha essa multidão de pessoas. Então, eu peguei minha câmera e começo a empurrar. Desculpa, gente. Empurrei até a porta da frente do sindicato. Entrei, falei que estava com Telesur e não sei o que. Felizmente, alguém me reconheceu do 247. Eu fui convidado de entrar. Foi informado de aguarda perto do elevador. Depois um casal muito gentil me reconheceu, me levou para o segundo andar. Tem uma outra barreira do segurança. O segurança estava ótimo, né? O MST fez um trabalho maravilhoso. Parece que o FUP estava ajudando também. Eu estava lá no corredor, tipo, mas por que eu estou nesse corredor? E a pessoa falou, não, porque Lula está chegando. Você veja aqui, Eduardo Suplicy, marido Rosário, depois vem Lula. Eu consegui falar brevemente com ele, muito brevemente, porque era eu pensei que dentro da área mais segura, ele não seria sufocado por tanta gente, mas até dentro do prédio, depois da barreira de segurança, todo mundo estava querendo abraçar Lula. Encontrei Mauro Lopes e descemos a escada e foi lá fora. E a palestra dele foi maravilhosa. Com certeza tinha o TVT e outros veículos da mídia posicionado melhor para mostrar a palestra do Lula do que eu fiz, né? No fim da noite, eu estava jantando com alguns amigos. Eles estavam brindando: Lula livre, Lula livre. Lula já está livre. Está livre. Precisamos inventar um outro brinde agora, gente. Pode ser Moro preso. Então, eu legendei uma reportagem antes do que Lula foi solto, né? Sobre quem transformou hoje no prisioneiro político mais importante do mundo. Já como Lula foi liberado, né? Julian Assange, que eu acho interessante, se você veja essa entrevista com John Pilger, que é um dos maiores jornalistas do idioma inglês no mundo, né? Você vai ver que quem foi montado contra Julian Assange é parecido com quem foi montado contra Lula. Eles tentaram destruir o caráter dele. Eles tentaram destruir a reputação dele e também jogam um monte de acusações falsas contra ele, para silenciar ele. Eles não conseguiram silenciar Lula. Será que eles vão conseguir silenciar Julian Assange? A situação dele parece bastante precária. Espero que vocês gostem da reportagem. Eu não vou falar mais Lula livre, porque ele está livre. E uma boa tarde para todos e todas de vocês.
Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Greg Wilpert in Arlington, Virginia. Julian Assange recently lost a court bid to have his upcoming February 2020 extradition hearing postponed. The hearing about the postponement took place on October 21, and according to observers who were present, he could barely speak in coherent sentences. Reacting to the hearing, UN Human Rights Rapporteur Niels Melzer warned last Friday that Assange continues to show symptoms of psychological torture. Melzer had visited Assange in May when he conducted an extensive review of his physical and psychological condition. In his statement on Friday, Melzer said, quote, "Despite the medical urgency of my first appeal and the seriousness of the alleged violations, the UK has not undertaken any measures of investigation, prevention, and redress required under the international law." In addition to the concerns about Assange's treatment at Belmarsh prison outside of London, many have also raised concerns about the impartiality of the proceedings against him. Assange was jailed last April when the Ecuadorian embassy, where he had been given political asylum, allowed the police to arrest him. He then received a 50-week sentence for having skipped jail in 2012. The Trump administration has since then requested Assange's extradition on 17 charges of espionage, for which he could receive a 170-year prison sentence in the United States. Joining me now to discuss the latest developments in the case of Julian Assange is John Pilger. He has been observing the Assange case very closely and was present at the October 21 court hearing. He is an award-winning journalist and documentary filmmaker. His most recent film is The Coming War on China. Thanks for joining us again, John.
Very welcome.
So let's start with Assange's condition. As I said, you were there at the last hearing. What was your perception of his condition and how he presented himself?
Well, I was at the last hearing and I saw Julian about a week before that. So I've seen him up close on a number of occasions recently. And I think I can agree with Niels Melzer's assessment. It's very difficult to tell. His physical condition has changed dramatically. He's lost about 15 kilos in weight. He is, to see him in court struggling to say his name and his date of birth was really very moving. And I've seen that when I visited Julian in Belmarsh prison, where he struggles at first and then collects himself. I'm always impressed by the sheer resilience of the man, because, as Melzer says, absolutely nothing has been done to change the conditions imposed on him by the prison regime. Nothing has been done by the British authorities. And this was almost underlined by the contemptuous way that this court hearing recently was conducted by this judge, by this magistrate. there was a sense among all of us who were there that the whole charade, and it seemed a charade, was preordained. You had sitting in front of us on a long table 4 Americans who were from the US Embassy here in London, and the one of the prosecution team was scurrying backwards and forwards to get instructions from them. The judge could see this, and she allowed it. It was just absolutely outrageous. And when Julian did try to speak, and to say that basically he was being denied the very tools with which to prepare his case, he was denied the right to call his American lawyer, he's denied the right to have any kind of word processor, laptop, he's denied certain documents. As he said, I'm even denied my own writings, as he called it, that is his own notes and manuscripts. This hasn't changed at all. And of course, the effect of that on his morale, to say the least, has been very significant. And that showed in the court.
Yeah, I want to dig a little bit deeper on that issue about the fairness of this trial. Craig Murray, who's a blogger and was also at the last hearing, wrote about a number of issues, which you also mentioned, and he specifically mentions District Judge Vanessa Barretzer, who basically, one of the things that she did was completely dismiss Assange's request for determination whether the extradition proceedings are even legal. That is, he cites, according to UK law, quote, extradition shall not be granted if the offense for which extradition is requested is a political offense. Now, what do you think of this issue? Is Assange's offense political, and what do you say about the judge's reaction to that request?
Well, I saw, and I know his lawyer, Gareth Peirce, very well, and she's not a person to really be angered as such, but I saw her before and after the hearing, and she was quite angry about the fact that she said, here we have an extradition hearing, and based on a treaty between the United States and Britain, and there is a section in that treaty that said, as you've just mentioned, no one can be extradited if and I paraphrase, if the so-called offence is in any way political. Well, under law, it's not a matter of opinion, they are political. All but one of the charges concocted in Virginia are based on the 1917 Espionage Act, which was a political piece of legislation used to chase after conscientious objectors during the First World War. It's political. There is no charge, there is no basis, no foundation for allowing these extradition proceedings to go forward. And almost perversely, the judge seemed to, if not acknowledge that, in her contempt for the proceedings. Whenever Julian Assange spoke, she feigned a kind of disinterest, a boredom. And whenever his lawyer spoke, the same thing. Whenever the prosecutor spoke, she was attentive. It was the theatrics of this hearing were quite remarkable. I've never seen anything like it. And then very hurriedly, when the Julian Assange's lawyer requested a delay in the when the case actually starts from February. They said, we're not going to be ready in February. And she dismissed that out of hand. And not only that, she said that the extradition case would be held in a court that is, in fact, adjoining Belmarsh prison. It's almost part of the prison. It's a long way out of London. So you have, if not a secret trial, but a trial in which, or an extradition hearing, in which very few seats are available to the public. It's a very difficult place to get to. So every obstacle has been put in the way of Assange getting a fair hearing. And I can only repeat, this is a publisher and a journalist convicted of nothing, charged with nothing in Britain, whose only crime is journalism. That may sound like a slogan, but it's true. They want him for exposing the kind of outrages, war crimes, Iraq, Afghanistan, that journalists are supposed to do.
Right. Finally, I want to ask you also about the support that Assange seems to have been getting or not getting. It seems that the media organizations that benefited tremendously from Assange's work are hardly mentioning his case, let alone supporting him. Also, human rights groups such as Amnesty International have urged the UK not to extradite Julian, but they haven't elevated the case. I just looked it up. They haven't elevated to the status of a campaign as they do for political prisoners normally. How do you explain this lack of concern among the media and human rights groups for Assange's situation?
Because so many human rights groups are deeply political. Amnesty International never made Chelsea Manning a prisoner of conscience, a really disgraceful thing. Chelsea Manning, who was effectively tortured in prison, and they haven't, as you say, they haven't elevated Julian's case. Why? Well, they're an extension. They're an extension of an establishment that is now almost systematically coming down on any form of real dissent. In the last 5-6 years, the last gaps, the last bolt holes, the last spaces in the mainstream media for journalists, for maverick journalists, for the likes of Assange, and not only Assange, for the likes of people like even myself and others, have closed. And the mainstream media, certainly in Britain, always held open those spaces. They've closed. And there is generally, I would think, a fear right throughout the media, a fear about opposing the state on something like the Assange case. You see the way the whole obsession with Russia has consumed the media with so many nonsensical stories. The hostility, the animosity towards Julian, my own theory is that his work shames so many journalists. He does what journalists ought to have done and don't do anymore. He's done the job of a journalist. That's can only explain it. I mean, when you take a newspaper like The Guardian, which published originally the WikiLeaks revelations about Iraq and Afghanistan, they turned on Julian Assange in the most vicious way. They exploited him for one thing. A number of their journalists did extremely well with their books and Hollywood scripts and so on, but they turned on him personally. It was really one of the most it was one of the most unedifying sights I think I've ever seen in journalism. The same thing happened in the New York Times, and I can only surmise the reason for that is that he shames them. We have a desert of journalism at the moment. There are a few who still do their jobs, who still stand up against establishment power, who still are not frightened, but there's so few now. And Julian Assange is totally fearless in that. He knew that he was going to run into a great deal of problem with the state in Britain, the state in the United States, but he went ahead anyway. That's a true journalist.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to leave it there for now, but of course we're going to continue to follow his case as we have been since the beginning. I was speaking to John Pilger, award-winning journalist and documentary filmmaker. Thanks again, John, for having joined us today.
Very welcome, Greg.
And thank you for joining the Real News Network.